7 Homicides to the Mayor by Ray Baez. Translated by Francine Kahn. Volume 1. Summary. And the content of this book talks about the abuses and injustices that are conduced when one brings to live in his home offsprings that have impregnated men. In great percentage of cases, the children that men have produced without love and outside of his marriage tend to be creatures that grow the attention, sin, and affection of the father. It is for obvious reasons that these creatures grow up to become insatiable rivals of the children who are conceived with love in a formal couple. For the man must read to avoid serious emotional and economic problems. For the woman it is essential to read to avoid pain for an entire family as well as their children. The author of this work feels obliged to share with his kind readers the historical content of this book. Reading this book is essential for all men of all ages. To avoid in their lives as well as in the lives of all their loved ones, the pain that leads to the abuses of the families, when to their homes, the man brings children that have been conceived outside of marriage. Especially, children that are conceived by mothers as economic instruments or by passion without the cultivation of a garden of love. The book at the same time helps women understand that having children without the consent of their lover will only bring infinite frustrations and pains to that innocent child, since in 90% of the cases, the man does not wait with love or wait in his arms a creature that was conceived without his approval and without his knowledge. This book talks about the real story of my Holy Father, entitled in this work as the Mayor. It was an October night in 1998 when the mayor received the author of the present work. He expressed his concern since I had stayed overnight at his brother Felix's house. That same night the mayor called me to question me regarding my decision to stay in Felix's house. My response was to find my mother's house lost title. However, from the answer given the mayor called me Big Mouth, adding, "You didn't come to my house so you could go partying with Felix." Upon what happened I told him that I would go to his house to dissipate his doubts. Notwithstanding what happened, upon arriving at the mother's house he received me with his characteristic smile and open arms. To my dear father, Dr. Jose Ramon Baez Acosta, the mayor, my greatest support and example. Acknowledgement specially to my beloved mother Rosa Almonte de Bertis, to my adored father Dr. Jose Ramon Baez Acosta, and to all the people that have directly or indirectly supported and assisted me in the edition of this book. INDEX Chapter I FIFA's Homicide Chapter 2 Larry's Homicide Chapter 3 Offspring's Reunion Homicide Chapter 4 Justice's Homicide Chapter 5 Yvonne's Homicide Diffusion Chapter 6 Press and Media's Homicide Chapter 7 Ray Baez's Homicide Chapter 8 Conclusion Author's Biography PROLOGUE. The author of the present work has thus shaped in detail on the pages of this book his own family experiences, so that in some way may serve the reader and any person whose character allows them to assimilate or take into account and put into practice the same, avoiding future emotional pains and headaches as they make their way through this diverse society to a better path. Begins with isolated reflections. The man is the one who seduces, in certain cases, with disinterest and innocence. The woman, on the other hand, accepts that seduction by similar passion and sometimes for economic and social interest, looking for a solution to her circumstances. In the relationship between a man and a woman, the man can be more easily seduced and to a certain extent victimized by the attraction towards the woman. Inside, the man thinks that he is the hunter, whereas in reality he is the trophy. In life there is no greater conquest for a woman than that which wonders dazzles her, transforming her normal life in such a way that she finally shows as the father of her children, even though the man thinks that he is the one whom has chosen to procreate with this extraordinary trophy that is the definition of the woman of his dreams or merely that moment's passion. Men by its very nature are seductive. Throughout history many women have been seduced by men, perhaps among them, only 2 or 3 accept attention and disinterested love. In any case, it is the woman who accepts, limits, prolongs or terminates in a normal relationship the attentions of any man. Why do I say that it is only the woman and not both male and female? Because women in today's society and in different cultures have the precise knowledge to avoid an unwanted pregnancy. It is also true that women, whom surpassing the limits in a calculated way and with premeditated interest, have renewed the oldest profession, making it even more lucrative in the 21st century. In order to illustrate, it is necessary to mention the case of the famous tennis player Boris Becker, whose history is well known worldwide. Becker had intimate relations with one of his admirers named Angela Ermakova. She became pregnant by self-insemination through orally collecting the tennis player's semen. Situations like this turn men into victims, who, because of social and legal obligations, must obtain financial resources to support the new being that in reality is imposed on them. For that reason, it is my allegation that between a man and a woman, whoever can be seduced with greater ease and even victimized is the man. All of us, at a point in our lives, have been victimized by a woman that tries to seduce us. As much as a woman points out that a man is a vagrant and a womanizer, fairly used words in the popular expression of all cultures, in reality the opposite occurs. It is usually the man who thinks that he hunts without realizing that he is the hunted, the prey. With this, I want to refer to the importance of the main character of this work, who throughout his life was the victim of his 7 victimizers. Hypocrisy should be left aside, and one must accept that all children who grow up far from one of their parents, that is, that they were conceived outside of marriage or of the formalities of living together as a couple, they will always keep inside their rancor, envy and resentment, for not having enjoyed the love, attention and care that the parents gave their other biological siblings. This can cause unimaginable reactions in human beings. The author of this work, as a father of 6 children and 4 relationships, understands that he cannot give the same attention to the children who do not live with him, because one has to allocate the time between your current family, work and other family members. Therefore, it becomes extremely difficult to dedicate time to those children who have been conceived in previous relationships and who are not part of the relationship with their current partner. Regarding divorce, the author considers it to be the worst thing a person could do. I say it from personal experience. It is preferable to remake a marriage, to recuperate the love and passion that has been lost, than to face divorce, the root of which many emotional adventures are manifested, which are conducive, leading to perhaps generate more children or maintain informal or formal relationships, leading to the same emotional circumstances that caused the first divorce. Remaking one's life after facing a divorce is extremely difficult. Consequences can be manifested as psychological and emotional disorders of obvious insecurity, even seeing the values of human beings cracked, thus missing basic moral principles and becoming victims of all kinds of abuses. In the new millennium culture, people live between real developments and pressures. Everyone wants to acquire the latest items that the market has to offer in any field, be it technology, fashion, etc. These are the reasons that the author considers to be the direct influence on the acts consummated by the biological children that the mayor generated outside of his home, without love and happiness for the birth of his child, whom was conceived on a minute's passion. This is the living example of the mayor's biological children, nicknamed FIFA and Larry. The items already described were the reasons that influenced both FIFA and Larry to commit the atrocities and abuses, even leading to the consummation of crimes. It has been scientifically proven that human beings, while more advanced in age and the more books that they read, usually have better memory and higher percentage of evading amnesia. For this work, in the author's opinion, it's indispensable to be read by every young, adult or elderly person. The young to be cautious and not fall into the mistakes that in this book the author describes, and the elderly readers, whereas male or female, so they can advise their grandchildren and their children. Nevertheless, the author sows the theory in this work so that every man and woman will learn to become partners and as a couple participate in the decision to create a being that in the future would become a daughter or a son, but with love, in a way that in the author's opinion, both man and woman will benefit from reading the story that follows. Introduction. Everyone, from personal or someone else's experience, know of the difficulties that arises when at the heart of the family, children from relationships with others or even a partner comes to establish themselves, being conceived with or without love. This narration of an individual nature, but widely supported in audiovisual material and legal files, is a way for the author to share his personal experiences with the kind readers regarding how harmful and unhealthy and least advisable it is to introduce to the heart of the home children that were born without the consent and love of the father. The present work tells in a real way the brilliant life and selfless work of the person known as the mayor, whom from personal experience suffered these difficulties, since throughout his life was he exposed to multiple abuses of an emotional, psychological and personal nature inflicted by 2 of his biological children, that he brought to live with his last marriage, consisting of his wife Yvonne and his family. I will begin this narrative, at the end of the mayor's life, making a brief description of his beginnings as where he was born. At the end I will explain in detail his 7th homicide, which by numerous circumstantial and even physical evidences, they indicate as their principal, material and intellectual actors his spouse and her son, Juan Aristides Rodriguez, who holds the rank of lieutenant of the National Police in active service until today, and the assistant of Mrs. Yvonne Altagracia Perez Grulon, widow of Baez. With the complicity and assistance of the cook of that time nicknamed Solemni, who frequently received as a reward a certain amount of money, from $200, as well as gifts given by me, I had her confidence as well as the reciprocity of domestic and security services in order to keep me informed about the events that took place around my main interest and concerned the mayor. The title of this work had its origin in the year 1990 when the mayor visited me in my humble apartment in the city of New York, where I was an individual who held an official position within the government of the city. On that occasion I introduced the mayor to the then mayor of the City of New York, David Dinkins. There were several reasons, among them, to show the mayor that I had achieved a social, cultural and community service status as he had done in his beloved homeland. The mayor did not express any discomfort when presented under that title. After a brief walk through Central Park in New York City, the mayor and I dined at the restaurant called Tequila Sunrise in the company of Jose Ramon Baez Rodriguez, his second son, and my younger sister Ramona Filomena Baez. After dinner, the mayor asked me where I would take him that night. I took advantage of this circumstance to go to the only renowned social club I knew called Ilusiones, located on the same street at the corner of Northern Boulevard and 39th Street, in Queens County, NY. When I took the mayor to the prestigious social club called Ilusiones, I requested a table for two. I introduced him for the second time under that title. The owners and administrators of the same came to meet him. When asked about his musical preferences, he requested a few songs by Juan Luis Guerra and also one or two bachatas. Because of the events that occurred at that moment, my feelings were of special complacency and happiness, especially when looking at the serene and vulnerable mayor, especially with the owners and administrators of the social and cultural club. Thus the night passed in a pleasant atmosphere. We danced until 3:15 a.m. in the morning, then we went to rest. As for me, I carried in my mind the image of that selfless character, the mayor, whose title he proudly identified. The mayor, during his life, performed different positions and activities, was a good psychiatrist, an excellent scientist, doctor, benefactor, religious, but of all professions including firefighter. In my opinion, the title that pleased him most was precisely that of being a mayor of his beloved city. As the son of a complicated but exceptional man, I allow myself to give some advice that comes from my experiences as a result of the brief contacts I had with two of the mayor's biological children, who were not born into his arms, much less were awaited with love. Chapter 1. Fifashomicide. Dra. Francis Baez, a.k.a. Dra. Francis Josephina Baez, a.k.a. FIFA. She was declared a natural daughter by Candida Sanchez Hierro, born in Calle Brea No. 87, in San Francisco de Macorís on January 27, 1972, at 5 a.m. and registered on July 12, 1981 at 8:20 a.m., 9 years later in the 2nd District in San Francisco de Macorís as recorded in the birth register number 00054 by late declaration in folio number 0020 record number 000320 of the year 1981. FIFA was not born with the surname Baez but with that of her stepfather, whose last name is Sanchez, who lived with her in Arroyo Hondo, a district of Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, in the house that the mayor purchased. FIFA's stepfather, as far as I knew, was engaged in gardening work for his daughter. FIFA at age 18 was established herself in Mayor's family circle, in the home that he maintained and cared for with his third wife, Mrs. Yvonne Perez Grullon, widow of Baez, around the years 1991 to 1992. FIFA, after graduating from high school, visited the mayor for the first time in his office and asked for financial assistance that would enable her to attend college. The mayor, expressing his humanitarian sense and great love for his children, brought her to live together with him and his wife. In the home also lived his son Emmy, in addition his other two sons Jesus and Raymond that he fathered with Mrs. Yvonne. The mayor in his home also lived with the two children that Mrs. Yvonne had with her ex-husband, Captain Rodriguez of the National Police. Furthermore, the mayor was so close to his relatives that he took his mother, Mrs. Marina Costa, widow of Baez, to live in his new home that he created with his third wife Yvonne. FIFA from the beginning was given a life completely different from that full of needs to which she was accustomed. She began to enjoy luxuries, comforts and all the attention as any of the other children that with love the mayor expected and saw being born. FIFA had her private room, cook, person to do her wash, driver, etc. In one way or another she managed to move in when the sympathy, affection and approval of the mayor's family and all her aunts and uncles who began caring and appreciating her, including Yvonne, the mayor's wife, who also opened the doors to her and accepted her as one more daughter. I met FIFA a year later, when she was around 20 years old. On that occasion for the first time I found out surprisingly from a story that she had fabricated against me, mentioning that on a beach where we the mayor's children and wife were, I had touched her private parts. Faced with this accusation, I told the mayor's wife that FIFA was not my type of woman, because just hearing her speak at that moment with such a lack of culture gave me a very bad feeling. I will never forget that day, while I told the mayor and his wife that they should be very careful with the way FIFA talked to my younger brother Raymond, who was barely 4 years old, to whom she showed sexual objects including movements, since he could see as something natural those actions when having sex with a girl. I have referred in a timely, respectful manner regarding the whole family and each of its members, with the purpose of making known to the kind reader the character of each of them, who in one way or another were involved in the homicides to the mayor. These details I consider should be taken as an example of how unhealthy it is to bring to the legally constituted marital womb those children conceived outside this bond. In most cases, these people grow and are raised in an unfavorable family environment, and by feeling excluded, they experience resentment that may prevail throughout their lives. This situation reveals itself in conflicts that are generated in the different aspects of social coexistence, affecting family relationships between parents and children and siblings, that is, those who have been expected with love and the necessary care. Generally, in order to overcome these conflicts, the intervention of professionals from psychology and even from the law is necessary in order to clear up doubts about the legal rights of these children who did not grow up with the love and care of the father. My thoughts and words were marked, so much so, that Raymond was accused of performing improper acts with a young partner, who was supposedly a minor. This caused legal problems for Raymond, the mayor's youngest son, who in turn decided to immigrate to the United States. This is literally what happened with the first attempt of FIFA's homicide towards the mayor. In my opinion, those acts were directed against me, the mayor and his son Raymond, saying that I had touched her private parts on a public beach in front of my 3 siblings, and in Yvonne's presence. I find this mishap as an incorrect behavior towards me. As time went by, FIFA managed to graduate as a doctor, the mayor undertaking the mission to train her as well as him with a specialty in psychiatry. At that time the mayor suffered the first stroke accompanied by a heart attack. FIFA had already graduated as a doctor and with a specialty receives a gift from the mayor. It was a house in a prestigious neighborhood of the town with the purpose of her establishing her home there. So much was the mayor's generosity, that he even bought FIFA her first vehicle. Between one thing and another he ended up giving her an office on the same floor where he had his medical office, demonstrating in this way his love as a father, but above all the pride of having a daughter who undertook and followed his steps in the medical area with a humanitarian sense. Nevertheless, from these events, FIFA began to develop envy and a harmful grudge towards the mayor because, in his schedule, he had at least a dozen patients a day, unlike her, who had none. FIFA also expressed her hatred towards Yvonne, the mayor's wife, to all children born within wedlock that were expected by the mayor with love and open arms, undertaking as well the Machiavellian task of convincing the mayor's children that lived abroad to join her with the purpose of suing him in court and incapacitating him. The first homicide includes precisely the Machiavellian actions in the plans that FIFA originated, the so-called Dr. Francis Josefina Baez de Baez Sanchez, also known as Dr. Francis Josefina Baez, who through the mayor's family circle, in a very subtle way, managed to contact my brother Jose Ramon Baez Rodriguez Ramoncito with the purpose of obtaining his initial support, since he was the pillar and base of the Baez Acosta's family relations. FIFA also got Ramoncito to convince Imita, the mayor's only daughter with his second wife, Mrs. Claire Badier, so that under her instructions and those of FIFA they could file a medical disability suit against the mayor. FIFA initiated her macabre plan with the intention that by means of legal actions the mayor's incapacity was declared, and in the company of her brother Larry they organized a team of dishonest legislators, composed by the lawyers Jacqueline Solomonian Burt, Martha del Rosario Aaron Di Carlo and Aurelio Velez Lopez. FIFA's psychiatric patient, who was said to be her cousin, trusting upon the lawyer Jacqueline Solomon to formulate and argue in a legal manner and through a lawsuit the medical reasons to declare the mayor medically incapacitated. FIFA's insane intention was to obtain full control of all the mayor's companies and properties. The mayor's children, who at birth were welcomed with open arms and father's love, among them Nena, Lord, Marinita, Ramoncito, Emita and Ray, thus nicknamed. Neither they nor myself authorized the preeminent lawyers to formulate any claim against the mayor, even worse, to be legally represented. However, in a strange and fraudulent way they obtained a fictitious power of legal representation, with the authorization of Ramoncito, my naive older brother. In the end, FIFA managed to convince Ramoncito, Larry, Emita and later all the siblings except for me, to participate in the legal action tending to declare, as I have already mentioned before, the mayor's incapacity, whom until then had accumulated a fortune estimated at $980,000 million, according to FIFA and Larry's verbal assessment. Through these tricks all the mayor's children, Emita, Ramoncito, Lourdita, Marina, Nena and finally the 2 children who arrived at the family after reaching adulthood, FIFA and Larry, they filed the lawsuit to declare the mayor's medical incapacity. As for me, in 2008 I visited the mayor to effectively check his health status and consider whether it was appropriate to recover him from the kidnapping and submission in which he was found. I was the only person who had the capacity and the necessary legal instruments to act and to snatch him from his captivity, to take him to the city of Miami and place him in a medical center specialized in pulmonary fibrosis. Inasmuch as the treating doctors at the clinic in the country and the mayor's hometown had suggested it to himself and his wife Yvonne. For this purpose, the children needed the express consent of his wife Yvonne, who hesitated and even refused to sign the authorization. So that in this way we could take the mayor out of that clinic and take him to Miami, to a specialized center to achieve his recovery. In the visit I made to the mayor in 2008, I called all my brothers and mayor's the other relatives to a meeting in his office, where I made a video recording with which I could verify that the mayor was fully lucid, in full enjoyment of his faculties. He spoke with coherence, he was active, he did not need assistance to eat or to walk. While we were all already gathered in the mayor's office, he invited us to take a tour of his medical laboratory. We visited all the departments, because it was very large. At all times the mayor showed lucidity and good physical condition. From his laboratory we left for his house. We went in Emmy's car, in the company of Raymond, my younger brother. As soon as we got to the mayor's house, he very worried. He told me that some of his children wanted to kill him to inherit what he had accomplished. At that time he requested my assistance to persuade my sister Emma so that she would withdraw the medical incapacity suit filed in the court against him. Given this fact, I replied that this was very easy, that he simply gave me his authorization to separate the group so that the other plaintiffs could give up their efforts when Emeta and Ramencito withdrew the legal action. In this context and with his particular and characteristic way, the mayor asked me in textual form, "With how much money do you solve that crap for me?" The memory of the events that took place on that night is such that my feelings emerged so much that tears want to escape my eyes. In the depths of my heart I will keep the unforgettable images of the mayor. To answer the mayor's question, I told him that once the group was divided I was sure that my siblings Emeta, Ramencito, Lourdita and Marina would move abroad, that the most serious problem was FIFA and Larry, the leaders, who were suing him, with whom I had no close ties or influence to persuade them to abandon the proposed lawsuit, which represented for the mayor multiple states of anguish similar to stabs on his back. Faced with these facts and to comply with the proposed requested for the first time in my life, I asked the mayor for $15,000 to cover both the expenses that would require the assistance of my sister Emeta, who was the main plaintiff, and to help my brother Ramencito, who I knew was going through serious health and economic problem. The mayor, in order to deliver the money I had requested, asked me to come to his house to deliver and talk to me. The mayor waited for me at 5:30 p.m. At that moment he gave me $7,500, in bills folded and secured with a rubber band. So much was the confidence that the mayor had in me that in his own words he told me, "My son, you are the only one to whom I can trust the raw material. I know that you can help millions of people." The mayor gave me the content of the raw material he used to cure 52 patients from AIDS. Name of the institution: Benéfica Hogar de Niñas Nuestra Señora de la Altagracia. 1. Name of the bank: Banco de Reservas de la República Dominicana. 2. Checking account number: 100010220000267. 3. Routing account number: not applicable. 4. In 3. Name of the representative of the institution: Luz Maria del Carmen Marte Serrano. 5. Telephones: 1-809-536-7405 y1-809-995-9923. 6. Email: hogarnsaltagracia@hotmail.com and luzmart@hotmail.com. Swift number for the bank account: Bradost. The mayor, to cure more than 52 patients of AIDS and the HIV virus, used the following raw materials and cocktails that improved the patients' the immune system in a very fast way. These raw materials that make up several medical cocktails are as follow: a plant called Tridescantia spathacia, also known as purple maguey. The medical cocktails known by medical scientific experts the goat of goats, which is the product of milk from goats that contain arthritis. Those special goats have a virus called CAEV. These goat virus plus medical cocktails, also using the cocktails of the plant called Tridescantia spathacia, destroys the virus HIV and protects people. WHO drink this special milk from goats with arthritis for life. When I arrived at FIFA's house, the same which had been a gift from the mayor, all the children who had taken part in the preparation of the disability claim were gathered there. FIFA and Larry meanwhile waited for me to arrive with the $15,000 that had been requested from the mayor. When I arrived, I proceeded to deliver the money to Ramencito and he gave it to FIFA. At that moment I understood that she was the person who exerted total influence on her brothers, especially Ramencito. It is obvious that FIFA was waiting for this money to somehow hasten the mayor's death and in this way succeed him quicker, gaining control of all his assets. I clearly remember that in front of all my siblings I asked FIFA what it was that she was looking for. She replied her intentions to become the president of Meta Pharma and that her husband would be the administrator. Before this energetically I told her that, you should have more than luck. It was in this meeting dated April 23, 2008, that it was first heard of the slander that FIFA had deceptively imagined and elaborated to all my siblings Marinita, Ramoncito, Lourdita and her husband Agustin, Nana and Emeta. Larry was also present as one of the leaders of the cunning plan to destroy the mayor's image and dignity. My surprise was such when I heard FIFA make serious accusations against the mayor. She said that he had raped her mother at gunpoint. The situation became more embarrassing when FIFA revealed to all her siblings that she had also been the victim of an attempted rape by the mayor. Discrediting as it were little with these accusations, FIFA stained the mayor's impeccable honor. Astonishing were the insults poured by FIFA, bearing in mind also hers and her mother's physical features, who were then and still today also terrifying. I imagined that my siblings, like Agustin, my sister Lourdita's husband, who was also present at that meeting, experienced, as I did, a serious emotional shock. As I remember, I left minutes later that same night, around 1 a.m., extremely disappointed to hear and observe how FIFA committed such a reprehensible crime to dishonor the mayor's character. This is the worst thing a daughter can do against her father, even more so when he was recovering from a stroke he had suffered. In order to dispel my thoughts, I asked Larry to take me to the airport at 1:40 a.m. more or less, as usual. He asked me for some money. I gave him $300 that I had withdrawn from an ATM. While at the airport, I waited for an airline counter to open in order to buy a ticket to Miami, specifically for the flight at 7:45 a.m. After these events, I convinced my sisters Emeta and Marina to meet me in New York. I supported Emeta for about 6 or 7 months, sheltering her in my house in Florida. Marina decided to move to her home in Albany, New York, which was a gift from the mayor. After what happened, I stayed away and had no relationship with the group of plaintiffs, which was headed by FIFA and Larry's attorneys, Jacqueline Solomon Imbert, as well as Martha Del Rosario Heron DiCarlo. In 2010, on a Thanksgiving day, I communicated by telephone with the mayor. During this conversation, I found him extremely overwhelmed and saddened with little spirit to talk. This state was due to the fact that his children, FIFA, Emeta and Larry, continued to firmly pursue the lawsuit against him, to take control of all his companies and real estates, as I have previously stated. The judicial process in the court was being won by the plaintiffs, to the point that FIFA and Larry had succeeded in annulling the last will and testament that the mayor had written while in full use of his physical and mental faculties. This hurt and affected the mayor's life, because his rights had been broken and consequently his manifestation of will. In short, FIFA during the meeting always wanted to distort and destroy the good image that the mayor had attained, who was already 75 years old and throughout his life in his country credited to being a humanitarian man, with scientific vision and above all famous. At the social level, he had more than 20 years on television giving marriage, health and psychiatry advice to those who needed it. The mayor, as I have already pointed out, had an impressive personality, was a benevolent and charitable man, but he was also a victim by being seduced by FFA's mother for the reasons described above. FIFA, in response to my affirmations in favor of the mayor's integrity, replied in a very rude tone, stressing that he had not only raped her mother, but that he had sexually harassed her, insinuating that he even wanted to be her proposed lover that she had rejected. To continue the dishonor and defamation against the mayor, Rafael Arturo Baez, better known as Larry, intervened in the discussion. In this sense, what FIFA and Larry were committing was a homicide perpetrated on the mayor's person, who, while in an agonized state, wanted to succeed him, transcending these facts negatively in the profession and history that the mayor had built through his actions and works of generosity for his people and society. To understand the uncivilized behaviors and rivalries between the self-proclaimed Spaniard psychiatrist graduated, Dr. Francis Baez, against the children of the mayor procreated and awaited by the mayor with love. We must understand that human being which outbringing or develops in a poor culture of immoral values, mixed within a turban that adorn their lives with dishonesty, greed and selfishness. These people, like Dr. Francis Baez, tend to lie in lieu of pathological habits. Dr. Francis Baez lives a false life, lives of promiscuous confabulations. That usually does more harms to herself than the other children of the mayor. For example, on December 15, 2010, Dr. Francis Baez, in her medical prescription to the author as her patient in just 15 minutes, Dr. Francis Baez reflects her poor knowledge of her medical profession. The prescription of Dr. Francis Baez, on the previous page, clearly displayed that drug of diazepam equals Vatrin, which normally is prescribed for a maximum of 10 milligrams for a maximum of 30 days. However, doctors in the United States, Canada, Europe and Asia only prescribe 5 milligrams for a maximum of 30 days. Is amazing for the author that when consulted for research purposes with physicians and psychiatrists, the second medication that is an antidepressant which was prescribed to the author with intrusions to take the antidepressant medication together with a high dosage of the sedative diazepam. To ingest these two medications at the same time, it would be a controversial reaction to anyone that follows such prescription that only a person without scientific knowledge in medicine can erroneously prescribe. Dr. Frances Baez must be a human being with serious complex of feeling superior before the eyes of her society, as Dr. Frances Baez reflects in the letterhead of her prescription book that she did a postgraduate degree of psychiatrist in Madrid, Spain, a city that she visited for less than 9 days. This is one of the reasons that the author concludes that Dr. Frances Baez is a fake who lives a life of promiscuous conspiracy. Case to be defined is that all psychiatrists of honorable practices do a postgraduate degree in psychiatry of no less than 4 years. Chapter 2. LARRYSHOMICIDE. Larry, just like FIFA, was established in the heart of the mayor's family at about 19 years of age. He had a very particular character and his personality was extremely arrogant, which showed in his morality and poor maturity. I met Larry in the street in front of the building where the mayor's office is located, a day in which Doña Gladys and Don Omero Obando, the mayor's assistant and best friend, respectively, informed me that the boy who was outside was my half-brother. My reaction to the event was spontaneous. I approached the boy, I showed him ties of familiarity and trust, engaging in a dialogue with him. However, Larry uncourteously began to laugh without stopping to hear we were brothers, while questioning him about his knowledge about it, answered affirmatively. When I asked his name, he responded by calling himself Larry. This seemed strange to me since, being the mayor's son, he should have been named Ramon and not Larry, as he had said. Larry explained that his mother, whom lived in New York, called him that. After this short dialogue and the unexpected meeting, I led Larry to the mayor's office, asking Doña Gladys to inform him that Larry and I wanted to talk to him. Although the mayor refused to see Larry because of my strong character for which I am respected, I forced him to see us. Taking advantage of the moment even when a patient was present, I asked the mayor if indeed Larry was his son. The mayor, before the interrogation, blushed with a slight pause in his work, indicating that it was a long story, but that Larry was my biological brother, who lived in Bonnie, and that he should return that same day to his town. Therefore, I told the mayor that since we had just met, he would invite Larry to dinner, and after we talked, he would send him back to his town. I respectfully said goodbye to the mayor and, as I always did, I asked for his blessing. I took Larry to the so-called Malecón, a famous area of the city. There we had dinner at an Argentinian restaurant called El Gaucho, and we talked about his life. When it was time to leave, Larry told me it was too late to take a bus back to his town. I told him there was no problem, that he could stay at my house. On the way home, I took the opportunity to take Larry to visit the mayor's residence with the purpose of introducing him to his other siblings. Innocently, I ignored the discomfort that would cause upon the mayor to make those sudden visits, both in his office and in his residence, especially given the way I had just met Larry that day. By then the story of how Larry had been born was unknown to me, whom I coerced into the mayor's house around 8 p.m. Upon entering the house, I found the mayor with his beloved wife Yvonne. The two of them were sitting in the dining room. As soon as Yvonne saw me arrive with Larry, she got up from the table and without saying a word went to the second floor. The mayor, Larry and I stayed in the dining room. For the second time the mayor asked me if I knew what I was doing, because he had already alluded that I should not have taken that boy to his office and much less to his house. My answer was that I had no problem, given that Larry was my brother, especially when he did not have transportation to return home, so I would take him to my mother's house. The mayor accepted this argument by adding in a derogatory manner that I could do whatever I wanted, but please do not bring that boy to his home again. Larry understood that the mayor did not see him with pleasure, much less as another member of his family. That night, when Larry was already at my mother's house, in a daring and insistent way, he wanted to try on some crocodile skin boots that I owned, claiming that he had never seen them in his life. Understanding this explanation as a present, I gave him my boots and several more gifts, saying goodbye for that night. The next day, all ready for my return to the United States, Larry told me that I had nowhere to live, so I offered him the room that my mother had built for me to stay, facilitating in this way that Larry finished his secondary studies and later attended the university in the city. At no time did my mother contradict my decision to take Larry to live in her home. On the contrary, she welcomed him into her mother's heart to the point of considering him as her 8th child. He lived together with my mother and my 3 brothers. Larry stayed at my mother's house for around 4 or 5 years. From the United States I sent him what was considered popular or fashionable at the time, such as clothes and accessories, including his first computer, which I took and delivered in person to one of the distributors owned by the mayor called Medicamento, where Larry worked. Returning to the topic of the siblings meeting, I must point out that FIFA, in the presence of all of them who very crudely accused the mayor of having raped her mother, who certainly has a questionable character. Larry with his arguments aggravated the situation, because he indicated that his mother had also been raped at one of the medical appointments that she attended as the mayor's patient, noting also that the two once and for many years had been lovers. There were several times that Larry reiterated that his mother had been raped by the mayor, coinciding with FIFA's unhealthy ideas and purposes, whom for absurd reasons became associated. The mayor in the execution of his profession was Larry's mother psychiatrist. From this perspective, a violation would have been impossible that it had occurred, because both were lovers for approximately 7 years. In this sense, it is not susceptible to forget, especially for a woman, the time in which she is in her period of fertility, within which there is a high percentage of getting pregnant by maintaining a relationship without adequate protection. Hence, it was not accidental that both FIFA's mother and Larry's mother had intimate relations with the mayor within that period of time. My particular opinion on these facts is that those women seduced the mayor with the purpose of becoming pregnant. To have a clear idea of the person nicknamed Larry, I am obliged to disclose one of the many stories in which he was involved. Larry was once an assistant to Don O'Maro, one of the mayor's employees, whom is also a friend and assistant, after being his driver, became the administrator of one of the mayor's many companies. This incident occurred in December, whose year, to be honest, I do not remember, when I returned to visit my mother Doña Rosa and therefore Larry, who still lived with her. On this occasion, the mayor gave Larry 3 envelopes containing money so that he could make the corresponding Christmas payments to his dependents. The amounts contained varied between 50,000, 10,000 and 5,000 pesos. I began to doubt Larry's integrity, when according to his assertion he had accidentally given one of the dependents the envelope containing the 50,000 pesos instead of the 5,000, emphasizing that someone had stolen it. I disproved this assertion explicitly, since it was impossible to make such an error regarding an envelope with 50,000 pesos. The envelope is more or less between 1.5 inches or 2 at the most, and the one with 5,000 is just 1/16 or 1/8 of an inch. There was no room for error between bills of 10 or 20 that they had given him. However, Larry reiterated that he had been confused. Throughout my life I have been a good person, and I have behaved in a judicious, honest, and therefore without any fear. With these circumstances, I openly and confrontationally told Larry that it was he who had stolen the envelope with the 50,000 pesos, given the impossibility of delivering it equivocally an envelope with such amount of money, believing that it contained only 5,000 pesos. This was the basis to stay away from Larry, even until a few years after he came to live in New York. At the time I received him with indifference and disinterest. However, I offered him work, one that involved a certain complexity, such as painting a property using oil paint, a task that is quite difficult and can only be done by a person who has a real desire to work. To my surprise, Larry accepted and looked for an assistant. However, he could not stand the rigor of the work, having as sole escape to return to his life of fantasy in the mayor's shadow, fulfilling in this way what I had predicted at some point. As can be seen throughout this story, the character of an adult whose origin is found in a poor culture does not allow positive manifestations both in their moral quality and in their ethical values, especially in the stages of maturity and old age. Prototype of these statements are FIFA and Larry, who are between 39 and 45 years old, act and proceed in a similar way as they did in their adolescence. There is no difference, perhaps the only one that is now more farsighted. Larry's homicide is based on the fact that the mayor was in a critical situation and in a delicate state of health. He infringed against his image, integrity and honor, as if the mayor was a perverse man, as Larry and FIFA were, accusing him of raping their mothers. This is the person who longed to inherit the fortune that the mayor acquired and kept honestly throughout his life, resorting to in order to achieve this goal, to dishonor the mayor and the entire Baez Acosta family's image, which at a certain time of his life had opened their doors to him. To summarize the story regarding this person, who by his temperament could be defined as immature and with severe mental deficiencies, in the last communication I had with Larry and FIFA, I pointed out to them that their personality was the reflection of their mother's culture. Therefore, they had conspired not only against the mayor's image and his brilliant history, but also against his health. An old proverb says, "Raise ravens and they will take out your eyes." Chapter 3. Siblingsreunion. In late February and the first days of March 2008, I received several emails and phone calls informing me that the mayor's wife and children had kidnapped him and that his health condition was serious. My brother Jose Ramon Corpus Baez Rodriguez had taken the necessary measures against the mayor's wife, questioning her because his children had been forbidden from seeing their father. Ramoncito hired the professional services of the lawyers Jacqueline Salomon and Martha del Rosario Heron de Carlo, whose professional Services were limited to declaring the mayor's incapacity considering his advanced age and his alleged health problems. The mayor had actually suffered 2 strokes and 1 heart attack. The purpose of this lawsuit was precisely to declare the mayor's incapacity, with the purpose of preventing his wife Yvonne from continuing to make transfers and purchases of goods in her own name and those of her relatives, as well as to end the money laundering that she had been doing simultaneously. According to the reports provided by attorney Jacqueline and Associates, the mayor's wife had negotiated and acquired houses paying for them excessive amounts of money. On the other hand, ignoring my consent and acknowledgement that the author did not authorize nor participated in the fraudulent and immoral lawsuit to incapacitate the mayor. The lawyers Jacqueline along with FIFA and Larry, fraudulently, these lawyers included my name as a plaintiff. I was outraged that the attorneys who conspired with the same interest as Larry and FIFA had included me in such an offensive lawsuit to incapacitate the mayor. My siblings insisted that their suspicions about the mayor's kidnapping were real, because none of them could talk to him via telephone, even worse to see him in person to verify his true state. By then, my concern increased in particular due to the mayor's suspected conditions. I made the decision to call his house and schedule a meeting with the mayor so that on the appointed day and time we would all attend, and we could check firsthand on our father's health conditions. When I called the mayor's house, I was pleasantly surprised, because it was he who answered the phone. As customary, his characteristic display of love and affection towards my person accompanied by his kindness and cheerful voice. On my part I was reciprocal to his display of affection, and as always I asked for his blessing, telling me verbatim, "My handsome son, I give you blessings." In the meeting that I requested, all the mayor's children should attend, including those conceived with his wife Yvonne and those that were included in the lawsuit filed before the Court of Justice as actors of the same, for as I have already reiterated, he was declared incapacitated while living. In order to attend the indicated meeting, I left for Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic on Monday, April 26, 2008. Once I arrived on the island, I immediately went to my sister Emma Marina Baez's house, where I left my luggage, which consisted solely of my carry-on bag. On the afternoon that the meeting took place, of which I was the organizer, after the respective greetings and the coffee we started the same, in my heart I honestly believed that we would only address matters related to the mayor's health status and the evidence of his kidnapping, which all indicated the perpetrator to be to Mrs. Yvonne Perez Grulanda Baez, the mayor's last wife. However, I got an unpleasant surprise, because the scenario was completely different from the one imagined. FIFA and Larry talked with my brothers who were there, they complained about the mistreatment they had been subjected to by the mayor. The meeting then began with the intervention of Dr. Francis Baez, also known as Dra. Frasi Josefina Baez, also known as FIFA, detailing the facts of how the mayor had raped her mother at gunpoint, who at that time was one of the domestic women who cleaned the mayor's office in San Francisco de Macorís, capital of the province of Duarte in the Dominican Republic. As a consequence of the alleged rape and abuse, FIFA's mother became pregnant. FIFA continued with her story and added that the mayor's actions could never be forgiven, especially when in her opinion he had not been a good father. From just listening to that spectacle I began to feel uncomfortable to the point of almost suffering an emotional shock. At that moment I did not know how to react. Should I leave the meeting or stay and listen to the other attendees victimize the mayor's honor? Marinita, my biological sister, followed in FIFA's words. While interjecting, she revealed, "Mayor, horrendous complaints about the explained that he had mistreated her, and not only her but also lured my other sister, by confining them in a school for nuns." Upon observing this second statement I was even more surprised and silenced and perplexed, much more when listening to my other sisters and brothers when they reported that they too had been victimized by the mayor. In their opinion, they had been mistreated by the mayor when they suffered abandonment at an early age, because they did not have the attention of a father, because they did not receive the love or the necessary time. Facts that were recounted by my older sister Marina Ramona Baez with almost tears in her eyes. The narration continued with my late brother Jose Ramon Corpus Baez Rodriguez, arguing that at an early age he had been abandoned and interned in a priest and nun school there by the time in which the mayor played the functions of mayor in the so-called National District in 1966. Similarly, there were plenty of disturbing complaints from Rafael Arturo Baez, also known as Larry. On her part, my half-sister on my father's side, Dr. Ramona Filomena Baez, said and insisted that she, like her other brothers, was the object of negligence and abandonment by the mayor, pointing out that he was a bad father. From a human point of view and according to my humble perspective, it is really outrageous that my siblings met on that occasion, not only to complain about how bad according to their opinion the mayor had been towards them, but also to plan and gather the necessary means to freeze his bank accounts and much more, to decide with respect to the sale or transfer of the ownership of his assets, with the firm purpose of inheriting them. Without fear of being wrong, I must say that in this meeting, as in the first that was held in FIFA's house, they openly transgressed against the character and honor of our father the mayor, by expressing herself in an inappropriate, disrespectful and rude way with respect to the extraordinary man, excellent human being and father. The latter I ratified, since the mayor was a person who gave his life for his children, his immediate relatives, his people. He gave generous donations to the church and its people. In the years that accompanied us and throughout his life, the mayor was an exceptional and exemplary father. He provided to his children without any limitation whatever they wanted, including the means to achieve their aspirations. As in every rule there is an exception. That was me. Throughout time I rejected all offer of gifts that the mayor made me, such as an apartment next to his church or a farm and other real estate that he would have liked to give and offer to me. The reasons that justified this way of acting were many, but the main one was that I had not intended to reside in that country, as I told the mayor. To complement this explanation, my healthy pride of being personally and economically self-sufficient independent of my beloved father, as well as having the rational thought that since I was not going to utilize or need any of the goods or gifts I could barely accept them. By having all my siblings and other relatives in the social and family circle with FIFA and Larry, they had been infected by their ideas, insane aspirations and hatred transmitted by their progenitors. That is my very particular opinion. From my personal experience, I consider it unhealthy to bring to a stable home where love, harmony and peace prevail, those children that have been conceived for various reasons into unspecified women who, due to a few minutes of passion, become pregnant. Given the trust that existed in our relationship between the mayor, my brother Homicidio and I asked him, "Poppy, how the devils did you notice FIFA's mother?" To which he replied, "My sons, all men at certain moments we have instances of desperate passion, more so when we do not have a stable partner." For me, the word passion changed its meaning in a striking way when I met a nun with beautiful physical features in a Catholic institution. One of my hobbies is to write poems in the light of those passions. In times when wounded and rejected have wanted to achieve the impossible, then, the nun, very sure of her vocation, manifested her unconditional love for our God. However, the nun spent some time explaining to me, among dozens of other counsels, that the word passion is of French origin and defines a yard love. This word roughly represents an act without love and without a logical sense of being. The love between a couple resembles a garden, which requires time and care so that they sprout their fruits such as affection, sweetness, nobility, strength, etc., that cultivated with healthy passion will be harvested in the future. My passion for that nun did not die. On the contrary, it became irrational, so much so that I ended up writing a poem in which I infused my passion for her. According to these meanings, it is now clearly defined that both FIFA and Larry, the mayor's only biological children, were then and today the product of irrational passions. Passions that did not have a garden. Chapter 4. Lexecution. The representatives of a state constitute of presidents elected by popular vote. According to their proposed government programs, the electors choose the person they consider the best option. Their term depends on society to consider them as good or bad rulers. The reasons for a government or another to be considered relevant depends largely on the management carried out in the different areas of political, social and economic, as well as how to deal with internal and external crises they face during their period. In this sense, and not far from reality, in every government there is the presence of certain elements that, far from contributing to the pursuit of collective welfare objectives, divert their contingent to other purposes. With this I refer to certain generals and police officers involved in the mayor's homicide, as is the case of Juan Manuel Fructuoso Heredia and Rudy de Jesus Almanzar Medina, former generals. These ex-officers of the National Police of the Dominican Republic were hired by me to provide investigation services regarding the events that occurred around the mayor's life, because, like many other members of his family, we had the certainty that the mayor had been the victim of a thoroughly planned murder. The hiring of these professional services, as I called them, I did at the time, not having a thorough knowledge of criminal matters. These ex-officials were presented to me as expert investigators and men of proven reputation. On a meeting that I held at the Hilton Hotel, where I was staying, I explained to the two former police generals the details of how the mayor's homicide could have happened, as well as revealing the circumstantial evidence gathered. During this first meeting with the former generals Juan Manuel Fructuoso Heredia and Rudy de Jesus Almanzar Medina, I received a text message in which I was informed that these people with whom I was meeting were direct collaborators of the renowned narco lord Figueroa Augusto. At the conclusion of this meeting, I verbally expressed the two ex-generals and future adversaries Fructuoso and Almanzar, looking them straight in the eyes as people with integrity do. "Gentlemen, this contract for investigative services is like a marriage. On my part, I did not sign any contract for the provision of investigative services with the ex-generals, since my lawyer, legal representative and attorney in fact, Juan Roberto Gonzalez Batista, who coincidentally was one of the children my mother had welcomed in your home. To demonstrate my good faith, I clearly indicated the ex-generals that for their considerations as gratification I would pay an additional 10% on the amount agreed in the contract. In the same week I proceeded to make the first payment to Fructuoso and Almanzar, which was $7,000 US. Subsequently, from a reliable source, I learned that former General Juan Manuel Fructuoso Heredia had visited Mrs. Yvonne, the mayor's widow, and her son, Police Sergeant Aristides Rodriguez, so that they could also pay him for the provision of his professional services. These people of dubious honor were members of one of the most important branches of a nation, the Ministry of the Interior, who, using their influence, obstructed the realization of justice, opposing the laws that they swore to defend at the time, resembling those earthworms that come out of the earth's cracks when it rains. One of my friends, a special career agent, defined these people in his textual words: those former generals and prosecutors are rats. On my part I had to contradict him. Then, from my point of view, the rats do not go out to steal any person's daily bread, the rats survive only from the waste of other living beings. From this perspective, and in my opinion, these former generals, officials, prosecutors and immoral ministers do not represent any government, equating to terminal cancer that afflicts humanity. When I took possession of the mayor's assets, that is, his companies and other properties, I did so by order of the court's authorities, with the collaboration of the police force and my lawyers. That is where that we find 3 members of the police in active service assigned to the detachment of the eastern zone of the city of Santo Domingo under the orders of General Suardi Coria. In a state normally the forces of order are always at your service. However, in this particular case an estimated 30% of its members do not, therefore, dedicate their quota to providing services to individuals and companies in the private sector. Among these officers, at the mayor's widow's disposal, was the sergeant in active service of the police Aristides Rodriguez, who was Mrs. Yvonne's son. More specifically in the case of agents under the command of General Ludwig Suardi Coria. According to unconfirmed sources, these agents received double remuneration from the state and another for their services rendered to individuals, General Suardi Coria being the chiefs among them the beneficiaries to retain the administrative salary of these officers who do not actually perform any police work. These agents provide their services as police officers and private security agents for numerous individuals and companies. In the case of the mayor's companies, which were administered by his widow, Mrs. Yvonne, in particular, she had the cooperation of 7 agents in the police active duty. Among these officers in the service of the mayor's widow was the sergeant in active service of the police Aristides Rodriguez, who was Mrs. Yvonne's son. The orders were dictated directly by Sergeant Aristides Rodriguez and the mayor's widow, known by these agents as La Doña, and who served them General Policio Suardi Coria with the support of their drug lord Captain Reyes, who led an armed command. Law, by not opening the doors of one of the mayor's companies to the sheriffs and the judge of the East Zone, and who also took part in the distribution and illegal sale of controlled medications. That afternoon, Captain Reyes did not allow me the emotional development of my addiction to adrenaline and legal functions and physical recreation. I found Captain Reyes' cynicism and a little shame surprising, who behind of a police major whose names I prefer to keep anonymous, made me aware of his boss's message: General Suardi, you must pay 50,000 pesos a month for security as a part of the salary for each of the police agents, adding that this amount is the same as La Doña Yvonne pays for the services received. These events not only occur in the eastern part of the city of Santo Domingo, but also in certain localities in Latin America, including countries of the European Union, Asia and other parts of the world. This is the description of my experienced knowledge that I have acquired by working and contacting the police services in 3 continents in different countries. The former Redi de Jesus Almanzar Medina and Juan Manuel Fructuoso Heredia were deposed for their ties with the narco lord Figueroa Augusto. Former Police General Juan Manuel Fructuoso Heredia, along with a retired general of the police and an attorney general of the Republic's brother, Francisco Dominguez Brito, these people were submitted to the prosecutor's office of the National District, accused by the company Dream Sport Corporation of alleged fraud, abuse of trust and association with criminals. General Juan Manuel Fructuoso and Pedro Dominguez Brito, the prosecutor's brother, according to the complaint, were part of a plot against the company when planning and executing illegitimate actions against the ministerial Carlos Manuel Midavir Mejia, who endangered the physical integrity of the sheriff. The complaint was filed by attorney Francis Ortiz, which also includes Jose Agustin Garcia Perez, Carlos Tavares and the brothers Francesco and Antonio Carbone. Superscript 1. Superscript 1 Castro, Pedro, Diario El Nacional, Accusando de Estafa un Abogado y Former, May 24, 2014. Therefore it should be noted that constitutional freedoms of all civilized nations have no respect between these individuals and thousands like them. These ex-generals and police officers can only be compared to living cancer cells to civilizations of this complex world, where the power given to these corrupt individuals by their governments, by technological means, to sleep with the criminals, the ones being investigated, and clients in opposition. Chapter 5. Ivonnesshomicide. The mayor showed his annoyance and disappointment towards Mrs. Clara Aurora Badier Ginebra, his second wife, when she was surprised by me and my best friend Pedro Arbaez maintaining intimate relations with a young woman nicknamed Marieta. It was extremely difficult for the mayor to assimilate that his second wife had developed these sexual deviations towards that young woman who had grown up and lived with his ex-wife Clara Aurora Badier Ginebra. In one of the many conversations that the mayor had each week with Mrs. Clara Aurora Badier Geneva, she asked him to transfer ownership of the properties, justifying it in her concern regarding the economic interests of her only daughter Emita. By then, these assets were the exclusive property of the mayor. This proposal also had another foundation. In the event of the mayor's death, Mrs. Clara Aurora Badier Geneva's daughter would have an economic future assured. Then, since at the discretion of this lady, the other mayor's children of the would leave his daughter destitute, a completely wrong idea. When the mayor consulted my opinion about it, I told him that the proposal had hidden interests, so I suggested that he should be much more careful from that moment on. Because in reality absolutely nobody, as is normal, knew or had an intuition about what the coming year would bring to the mayor, his ex-wife, Mrs. Clara Aurora Badier Ginebra, and her relatives. The mayor obviously decided to divorce. The mayor never managed to overcome being wounded by his second wife with his practices and scented experiences. Clara had had as her anonymous partner a young girl whom the mayor considered her as his daughter. Once the mayor was divorced, he sought refuge in one of his many lovers, falling deeply in love and passions that resembled a flowering garden, this woman who was his last wife Yvonne. My brother Pedrito and I got to know almost all the mayor's partners, since we used to go out dancing with him and his best friend Omero every weekend. Very often the mayor used to meet accidentally in the clubs that he frequented, a well-known friend. As a result of the greatest weakness in men, the mayor was captivated and accepted refuge in the rains that extinguished the fire in the early hours, in Mrs. Yvonne Altagracia Perez Grulon, who even being married was his lover and patient for many years, until the day they got married. The mayor, when presenting signs of emotional depression, took refuge in the victim's arms, his patient who had become his wife, who considered him a target of her maneuvers. The mayor was fully convinced that it was he who had made a magnificent and extraordinary conquest. This way of thinking was due to the fact that during the years 1980 to 2005 the mayor was a man of exceptional physical presence and natural energy, but at the same time very demanding in all his whims and projects. His new conquest, already converted into his wife, Mrs. Yvonne, explicitly practiced what residents of Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic know as witchcraft. With these practices in which they expressed their harmful intentions, she managed to separate the mayor in the first place from his holy mother, Mrs. Doña Marina Baez Acosta, later from his brothers and from all his children. From the years 1999 to 2005, the mayor lost his free will and the ability to make decisions for himself. This made it impossible for him to visit his favorite son in the city of New York, who narrates. From my part, I gave the mayor the air tickets to spend the holiday season in the city of Miami in New York, in the company of his wife and 3 children that he procreated with her. In spite of the fact that the mayor planned his vacation with anticipation and joy, that was not accomplished. 2 weeks before, with afflicted and weak voice, I received his call in which he communicated both his inability to travel and visit me, and his feeling of sorrow in the depths of his being. That trip was planned and booked exactly 8 months in advance. Today I still have the mayor's air ticket with the estimated cost of about $5,000, as physical and indisputable evidence that everything narrated in these pages are true. This chapter contains at least 6 or perhaps 10 pages with definitions of the multiple aspects in which a human being can be the victim of homicide on a personal, professional, but above all, physical level, when referring to the humanity attack against the mayor. In the specific case of Yvonne the mayor's widow, it is necessary to explain in detail the circumstances that prevailed in her acting towards the mayor's children that were produced with previous partners, including those that later were integrated into the family, such as the case of FIFA and Larry. It is obvious and logical to understand that when a woman or a man manifests his desire and unite through formal acts, they are accepting their partner with their past, with their history, which may be the children produced with previous partners. To begin with, Yvonne interrupted all communication in order to keep the mayor away from his closest family, which included his mother, siblings and other family members, but especially his children whom the mayor loved unconditionally. For these purposes, Yvonne relied on the service of security personnel, preventing the mayor's children from having direct or indirect contact with him, except for me, since I used to call and ask the staff to inform Yvonne that I would call again at 1 p.m. or 2 p.m., that is, at a specific time that same day or the next day. I would also demand that the mayor be available for me at that time that day, otherwise I would energetically end my communication by telling Yvonne, "You do not want me to be there tomorrow or the next day in person." In this way I was always able to communicate with the mayor. From his part, the mayor always used to tell me that I was his beloved son. He even did it in front of his wife, his other children and the service staff, in his literal words. "That's my handsome son, that's my beloved son. Where Homicidio walks you have to honor his footsteps." Indirectly, the mayor was manipulated, kidnapped and held incommunicado by his wife Yvonne, since, in his opinion, all of his children were considered equal and feared that they would cause damage to the mayor, thinking that they would be similar to FIFA and Larry in their doing, having caused such detriment and damage to the members of the Baez Acosta family, especially to their head of family. This is what I was able to perceive in January 2009. The mayor's death occurred at 8:30 a.m. according to the autopsy's results. The food, rice, that he had digested at around 12 o'clock or 13 p.m. were still intact. This indicated that his death took place an hour or two after lunch. Generally the mayor, in his menu, included white rice and other vegetables. He did not eat meat. It is surprising and outrageous, and I think it must be for anyone, the fact that the mayor's wife upon his death did not call his brothers, much less the mayor's children conceived outside of their marriage, to communicate the painful event. No one found out about this, because the widow did all the necessary funeral arrangements on her own. All the mayor's relatives were informed of his death when they moved his body to the morgue. We learned what had happened through one of the employees of the funeral home who knew the mayor, whom called the attorney Felix Baez Acosta, the mayor's brother. The event began to be revealed in such a way that 5 hours later everyone knew about it. The funeral respects to bury the mayor had a lot of debate, given that his wife wanted to do it without a compulsory autopsy in 24 hours after he died, without the children who were in Spain and the United States attending the funeral. It was a court order that delayed the burial for 3 or 4 days, giving the mayor's children time to arrive from abroad. Therefore, all the children attended the funerals except for me, of course for obvious reasons. The mayor's widow, in order to comply with the act of mourning, used approximately 25 police officers in service. They were mixed among the attendees and relatives and located at the entrance of the room and around the coffin. These agents and civil polices were hired by the mayor's wife, always to safeguard his integrity, but never to protect the mayor while he was still alive. On the other hand, the mayor's widow had a disagreement with Uncle Felix when questioning him why he had not come to express his condolences to her. In his own way he answered that she was the one who had to do it, because he was a true Baez Acosta and also was her brother-in-law. The mayor died without anyone by his side, not even his family doctor or a nurse were present. The mayor died alone in a bed, while his wife Yvonne was who knows where. When I entered the mayor's companies, I had an overwhelming feeling when I did not find a single photo of the founder of the same, either hanging from a wall or at one of the desks in his offices. It was painfully displayed that the mayor's widow wanted to erase the mayor's image, as a creator and the real symbol that he himself was. The mayor was a creator, having initiated countless companies, creator of more than 800 formulas of medicinal products, chemical compositions, vital medicines to assist and cure diseases, from cancer to the cure of AIDS. Obviously, the mayor created thousands of jobs for humanity. But La Doña Yvonne ordered for all of the mayor's pictures to be taken down. The expensive paintings that the author had put in all the places to honor the image and the memory of the creator of those companies. The mayor during his last year of life felt the need to talk with certain members of his family circle, especially with me, because, according to his reasoning, I was one of his children and loved ones. I would understand precisely because I was his right hand and crystallizer of all his orders and desires. Besides being his son, I was his friend and confidant. I resembled a tomb in keeping his most intimate secrets, which we shared for a long time. I am certain that the mayor in his last moments, on his deathbed, wished that next to him was the person he loved and trusted the most. It was not his mother, because she had already passed away. Knowing the mayor as I knew him, I am certain that among the people who should have accompanied him at that time were myself and his sister Tuda, whom on many occasions assisted him in the care, upbringing and education of his children Marinita, Ramencito, Nena and I. I do not say this in a selfish manner, on the contrary, because from my naturalness and simplicity it is what I still think and feel. Surely, the mayor also wanted to talk to his brother Felix Baez Acosta, whom he considered more than a brother, because he was his business partner and confidant. It is very important to point out that Ivan, for obvious reasons, to create Ivan and Ego to be the great brain, the great person, and the only image of the creations in the developments of the mayor's companies. Ivan did not hang in any of the mayor's companies, not even a single photo of the true and only creator of thousands of scientific formulas to cure thousands of diseases. But the mayor was the sole creator and buyer of all his properties. Ivan, without caring about the reality of all the thousands of people that loved the mayor, wanted to erase even the mayor's image in all his creations, in which he was a king. The author hung a photo of the mayor in each of the companies and even in the employees' dining room of the mayor's laboratory. Subsequently, Ivan managed in a Machiavellian and illegal way to negotiate with FIFA and Larry and the Three, with the assistance of the lawyers Jacqueline Solomon, illegally returned to administer the mayor's companies. If the mayor's children did not live in Aunt Tuta's house, if they were not educated or advised by her, then they were considered as children of the street and therefore not worthy of being part of the mayor and his holy mother's family. I am quite sure that the mayor, when he left to paradise to be with God for many reasons, wanted his sister Lourdes by his side known as Aunt Tuta, his brother Felix, his children Nana, Lourdita, Marinita and myself. The mayor felt the need in the depths of his being to express to all his loved ones his last words. To quote, as an example, the words of the famous Greek philosopher Zacharias, who before his death pronounced his loved ones and followers, "Now I know that I don't know anything." Without devaluing the philosophical work of Zacharias, in my humble opinion, the mayor in his last moments would have advised his closest, beloved and loved ones, spent this time more rewardingly. But, in reality, Yvonne, the mayor's widow, made all contact with him impossible. She always had the doors of her house closed. These were guarded by 4 policemen in active service, a property that had been acquired by her with the money provided by the mayor, precisely 1 year prior to his death. I suppose that Yvonne never even in her wildest dreams could have imagined living in such a luxurious residence. When questioned, how could it be that Yvonne kept the mayor locked away from all contact with their beloved ones, including his children awaited with love and born into his arms, the only answer that comes to mind is her envy and greed. Known by my barbarian ways, for me there was no wall or mountain that I could not conquer. I remember that I was arrested at the entrance to the mayor's residence by those 4 unfortunate and frightened policemen, whom because of the position they occupied and their weapons, supposedly had the courage and power to prevent my entry. However, if it had not been for my insistence and firm threats to those 4 cowardly guards, I would not have had the opportunity to say goodbye to my beloved father during his lifetime. In this meeting, best understood as a farewell, Yvonne Ladonia ordered her security guard to transfer the mayor, who was in serious health condition, to meet me, a conversation that was recorded. At that time both the mayor and I expressed our feelings and wept. Inside I knew that I had to maintain my serenity, but at the same time I also had to make a decision, despite not having at that time the legal means to ensure my intentions to remove the mayor from imprisonment he had found himself. Throughout my life, actions and decisions have always been taken with the support of the law, to which I consider a guiding factor. In the last meeting that I had with the mayor in the company of my siblings Emmy and Raymond, Yvonne's sons and messengers, I told him directly, "Daddy, you want me to take you to Miami, to a penthouse where you can feel at home." I also told him, "Daddy, I'll find you a nurse, a blonde blue-eyed female doctor, beautiful, to take care of you, love you, give you oxygen." His answer was, "No, mijo, here I have everything." Given his response, it was logical to assume that the security contracted by Yvonne, the 4 mentally retarded, plus Yvonne's 2 sons with the mayor, Emmy, and Raymond, what else could the mayor have said? I also observed that out of respect for the mayor and the law, it was not wise to take any decision and action to keep him away from the shelter of those parasites that surrounded him. I thought at that moment that it was not worth it, even if it were a psychological kidnapping to which he was subject to, under suggestion and threats. This was not legally disclosed as a kidnapping, since the mayor apparently had the false control of his life and destiny. For the author, it was regrettable and painful that having the ability and having the legal means to remove the mayor from his confinement, to take him to a safe place where his life would be prolonged, he had not been able to do anything, both for the reasons exposed and for Yvonne's manipulation, her children and the policeman hired for security, who throughout the meeting had the audacity to sit next to the mayor with the sole purpose of listening to the private conversation we were holding. Although the principle of many people is that the past is the past, in my very personal opinion the present is a product of the past and the time to live. Who would like to leave the past in the present has a very weak judgment of the future, as a servant of human rights, of justice, of the just, correct, honest and moral. Within my cultural heritage, the word past does not exist, until justice is fulfilled in the present. In my professional opinion, the mayor was the victim of Machiavellian actions by his two children, FIFA and Larry, who were always supported by legal instruments used by their immoral lawyers, Jacqueline Solomon and Martha del Rosario Heron DiCarlo. The mayor was vitized methodically and calculated by his wife Yvonne. In joint collaboration of E.R. Elderson Police Sergeant Aristides Rodriguez. At that time, his wife Yvonne had already begun her final performance of obvious and false affection. The love of that blooming garden had dried up. It is important to note that the mayor's birthday was celebrated every January 29th, and his death occurred on March 13, 2011. That has infinite interpretations with negative content regarding the direct accomplices of the mayor's corporal homicide. In need of emergency examples. 1. One can observe the mayor with his left eye closed and his right eye open. 2. The mayor appears with physical deficiencies, as well as loss of 50% of his body weight. 3. The mayor has a faded smile, a smile that defines his happy day-to-day demeanor. Police Officer Juan Aristides Rodriguez Perez, of whom I believe has serious mental and personality deficiencies, had direct participation in this homicide by limiting the mayor to the urgent medical attention he required. I also consider that, within Yvonne's homicide, the mayor also suffered emotional distress from being traumatized and hit with the decisions and legal actions of FIFA and Larry. Yvonne Ladonia absolutely knew the recommendations prescribed by the treating doctors in the private clinic in which the mayor was treating, as well as of the supply of the medicines in the appropriate doses. The doctors of that clinic had expressed the urgency of transferring the mayor to a specialized neurology center in the city of Miami, with the purpose of prolonging its existence. Around the world there are many elderly people or not, who lead a normal life with the appropriate treatment for their illness. That would have been the scenario of the mayor at his 75 years of age, having been treated in a timely manner in a specialized clinic that counted on the latest technological advances for his disease. Chapter 6. Homicidiosandmedia. The press and the media in the mayor's country of origin, like that of Latin American countries, habitually write unfortunately articles in negative contents, in the particular case of the mayor, regarding his image and his experiment and discovery of the raw material, better known as the virus that causes AIDS. It is appalling that the media in the 21st century focuses more on the negative aspects that sometimes surround a person or at the discretion of the vulgar and gossip and rumors, departing from their true mission, which is to report truthfully and impartially, highlighting the positive contributions for the benefit of society. Although, in due course, the written and audio-visual media did publications on psychiatric, scientific and social work, as well as the multiple events as a benefactor that the mayor made for his people, the demonstration of those types of media were very few. From my point of view and without referring to a particular media, I consider that when the press, be it written or audio-visual, focuses only on the negative aspects of a person, who during his life and professional career has served as a productive and positive member of society, that media that published the news directly committed a homicide on the idiosyncrasy of that person, in the case of the mayor on his person and scientific achievements. In this sense, I esteem and define disastrous that any media of any nature directs its vision exclusively to the negative aspects or facts of a person or event respectively. However, there are also media outlets that, because of their objectivity and authenticity, can be considered as positive, since their publications focus on certain aspects at a political, social and cultural level, allowing the person receiving the news to have full conviction of its veracity, unlike those media that in one way or another because of its sensationalism causes harm to whoever generates the news. Chapter 7. RAYBAEZSHOMICIDE. Given that FIFA and her brothers claimed that the mayor's second son with Mrs. Yvonne was not the mayor's son, not only because he did not attend meetings of the Baez Acosta family, but also because in his opinion he did not even have physical resemblance to his mother, even worse with the man that raised him, the mayor. I decided to initiate a lawsuit before the Court of Justice, so that all the mayor's children could perform a DNA test, counting on the support of my lawyer Dr. Juan Roberto Gonzalez Batista, a legal professional. Throughout my life and within society I have heard that not one but many people have paid to pass a medical examination, a driver's license or another type, but never that any person pay not to pass an exam. Being a person of integrity, complete in every way and of irreproachable morals, I was stunned to learn that the result of the DNA test performed on my samples was negative. In this case, the mayor's homicide and the succession of his heirs, including FIFA and Larry who had defamed him, begins a dilemma. Only God knows that Ray am the fourth legitimate son born in the cradle of the Baez Acosta family and conceived and awaited by the mayor with love and into his open arms. Only Ray can singularly feel the pride of not being related in any way to the merely biological children the mayor had without a garden of love that awaited them at birth. Since the mayor felt violated by both FIFA and Larry's mothers and the characters that make up the horrible human development of these two children who were born outside the mayor's home, but that they arrived at that home to create a cancer of gossip, hatred and guerrillas among all the individuals that formed the nuclear Baez Acosta family. Very well, in your opinion, dear reader, the sad moment when I had to listen and observe the slanders stamped by FIFA and Larry and my siblings' apathy. From that moment I sensed that even though I was the mayor's favorite son and therefore always treated with affectionate and heartfelt words, "My dear and handsome son, be careful with my son Jose, Ray, that one is manly like me and will easily split your face in three." On the other hand, absolutely everyone knows that in the most rightful way I have always honored God, my mother and my deceased and holy father, in good faith and not with the intention of being his heir. On my part and in honor of the truth, I did not need to pay any money to change the DNA test result, because, in life the mayor gave me all the love and affection that a father can give his son, and that my siblings cannot imagine. The devil whispers, "You can't withstand the storm." The warrior in Ray replies, "I am the storm." The mayor and I were friends and partners in many adventures, from those nights uninterrupted by the sun, to the nights of nervousness because of the real panic that troubled, in that moment. Accepting the DNA test result that I had requested, I expressed to my spiritual brothers in God, Leo and Washington. Brothers, one more stripe for a tiger is nothing. What really matters is that we are still the kings of this jungle. If something goes wrong in the DNA test, what else can be done? One must blame Dr. Posh. When I received the bad news of the DNA test that was performed, I smiled and said to my brothers Leo and Washington, "Good with a mother as beautiful as the one I have." Just imagine the mayor, who was a colonel of the fire department at the time, tell his colleagues, "Listen here, between us firefighters we don't step on each other's hoses, so you respect my Rosita, because this revolver I don't carry it in vain. My father gave me the greatest gift that someone could give to another person, he believed in me." For the mayor to fight for a love that perhaps at that moment would be impossible, it was his great task to conquer it, making it a regular habit and very well dominated by the mayor. If I were not the mayor's biological son, it is perhaps because another person took the mayor from his moment of conquest. That was not new for him, since his 3 ex-wives each had their respective boyfriends or husbands. It is obvious that the mayor in his blood was impregnated with the pride of a conqueror, making him a man far superior to a Casanova or Don Juan. In me, there is no restlessness or uneasiness even for a second regarding the result of my DNA test. However, for my biological ex-siblings, that such proof was not favorable to me. They compared it to the consummation of a homicide in the specific case against the mayor. The day in which the DNA test was carried out, my brothers Leo and Posh, I am sure, will remember that in order to offset the cost of the exam I requested the help of the nurse who collaborated. In the practice, obviously I needed her beautiful assistance. She was the one who took my blood sample, and in doing so she was impregnated with my passions. None of the mayor's children, 12 that in total he procreated, may have the arrogance to say that I was and I will be the best son the mayor could have in life and after it. This, not because I never accepted any gift from the mayor, not because I am his writer of the present work, nor because I have donated many machineries in the mayor's laboratory, not because between him and me we were best friends, but because in my opinion it is in life when a person must externalize their intrinsic feelings manifested in real works and not in meaningless deceitfulness. Life as love is extinguished and turned off. The important thing is that at that moment it is done with honor. FIFA and Larry are entirely aware of what is real, but also of what within their stories is false and perverse, so much so that they are amateurs on what they do. The writers and authors of lost stories have lost all connection with reality. These people are more enemies of the truth than of the fantasies that adorn their lies. The hoaxes conceived and declared by the sinister minds and languages of FIFA and Larry have meant negative consequences for the mayor's children, because, with those, the legal and ethical codes, the truthfulness and the reality have been violated. FIFA and Larry have made their extensive literary creation, referring to it in some way, its singular characteristic, so much so that their influence on the mayor's children is overwhelming and unbearable. These, in my opinion, are the most logical reasons to affirm my words, regarding the fact that it is not healthy to bring to live inside one's home in legitimate marriage those children that were conceived without love and outside of the heart of the family. Also, it is necessary to be aware that when children have been generated outside the marriage bond, it is logical that the surprise victim is usually the man, considering the cultural and social differences that mothers and other maternal relatives transmit to their offspring, in order to understand their future behavior. Recorded video transcript. As the author of this work, I am obliged to clarify that only with my intervention was it possible to materialize and hold meetings between my siblings and the mayor. At the last meeting held, of which there is audiovisual evidence, it is seen the insane intentions of FIFA and her accomplices to confront the mayor in spite of his delicate health state. On my part, I requested the assistance of an impartial person to be present at the meeting with the mayor's widow, with the intention of lessening FIFA's the malicious ideas. The following is the transcript of the video recordings. The mayor, not great-grandmother. Ramencito, my great-grandmother. Marinita, great-grandmother. The mayor, your great-grandmother, my grandmother. Ramencito, they left for Macorís, for San Pedro de Macorís? The mayor, no, their dad brought them to San Pedro de Macorís. Ramencito, he works there, in the sugar mills. The mayor, in all the sugar mills, it was my dad who taught the Dominicans how to make sugar. Ramencito, your grandfather. The mayor, yes, my grandfather, his name was Francisco Javier Cuello. Ramencito, and then what happened? Why did the family lose everything? Why did Juanita's mother end up being poor, very poor? Marinita, yes, yes, yes. The mayor, why what? Oh, why? He never gave anything to his children. Marinita, of course, because he took away their last name, and by taking away his children's last name he took away their right. The mayor, so I'm going to give you nothing. You know how men are like. Why will I give anything to that unfortunate woman if I take my family name from my children? Mom should be called Marina because it was not Mercedes. That Mercedes was put by her godmother. She was only Marina Palau, Marina Cuello Acosta. Marinita, it was her second name. The mayor, and the mom, my grandmother Anna, took away the last name Cuello and did a new paper, and in it said Marina Acosta Palau. Ramencito, and Granny gave her the wrong birth date because Uncle Julio appears to be older than Granny. The mayor, what? Ramencito, the date of birth of the grandmother on her birth certificate is wrong, because Uncle Julio seems like he is older than his mother. The mayor, yes, yes, my son, is that everything here? It was not as it is now that everything is computerized. No, my son, all that was done by hand. The birth certificate books and others were filled by hand. At that time they had donkeys that were the civil judges. Marinita, Dad, in what year was Granny born? 1907 or 1906? Ramencito, in 1908 it appears in the birth certificate, then, it says '08. Marinita, but she says that she. Ramencito, she says that she was born in 1903. The mayor, Mom? Mom says she was born in 1906? Marinita, in 1906. Ramencito, but the birth certificate says 1908. The mayor, yes, it's fine, but she said she was born in 1906, that was an arrangement with the civil judge. Ramencito, Uncle Julio says it was in 1903. The mayor, in 1903. Ramencito, in 1903. The mayor, even lower, You realize how it was a mess. At that time things were not a civilized country like the European countries in the United States, the same Canada or France, no. This was a colony and very badly managed. Ramencito, Papi, what I want to ask you, why don't you explain to us? What happened to you, with the stroke and the effects of all that? The mayor, Mom, you don't remember when a stroke happened to Mom? Marinita, yes. Ramencito, I came to yours. The mayor, to Mother's. FIFA, I was on call. Ramencito, let me tell you, Granny had her stroke, which I remember. The mayor, of 3 or 4. FIFA, she was 73 years old. The mayor, at 73 years old, at the same age as mine. Nana, no, Dad, yours was at 70. The mayor, what? Nana, yours was at 70, you were younger. The mayor, I say that is was at 73 years old. Nana, Granny's, but yours was at 70. The mayor, was he 70 years old? Mama was almost a year and a half that she did not recognize us, you remember? Ramencito, Papi. The mayor, and, who are you? The mayor, I did not get there. Ramencito, Papi tells us what happened to you. The mayor, to me? Ramencito, explain it to me. The mayor, of course my son, from the beginning shows SHSA, give me a moment my daughters, from the beginning to the end. Ramencito, the symptoms, everything. The mayor, I did not feel anything, absolutely nothing. Ray, in regards to that, can ask you a question, Poppy, so you can go? As you are well focused, I have several questions, but will only ask one. I want to ask you, if you have, okay, a certain type of individual concern for each one or all of us. Even if do not say them. The mayor, for each one? Ray, that if you have any type of individual concern. For four. The mayor, me? Ray, for us, in other words something personal. The mayor, you can each ask me whatever you want. Ray, no, if you have something to ask us individually, also. The mayor, absolutely. Ramoncito, Dad, what Ray wants to say is that if you want to ask us something, you ask us too. I ask you to explain the process to me. Now if you want to ask me something, ask me. The mayor, no, I'm not going to ask. If I let you know everything about your dad, everything about his mom too. Ramoncito, tell me, Poppy, tell me then. The mayor, well, one afternoon I was always going to check on Medicamenta because Medicamenta was a mess, such a mess that they broke it, still owes Medicamenta 9 million pesos to Metapharma still, Homero stole 3 million. Ramoncito, but we're not going to talk about that, Dad. The mayor, wait my son, because I was already arriving to see how things were and where the leak was. I felt a little nauseous, but I myself didn't pay any mind. I have a strong character like my mother, aggressive. Your Grammy's character was aggressive and such as mine. You see, the son resembles his mom. That is why Papa would say, fuck boy, don't resemble your mom. Man up, you are a male. Your grandpa would tell me when I was little, and you met him, because I sat you three in bed in the clinic, you remember that? Ramoncito, sure, because when he was in bed we slept with him there, all of us. The mayor, but before the clinic, I sat you guys with him, gave them kisses, you guys that were his grandchildren. Well, after I had that small dizzy spell, I was dizzy and nothing. My mind is better than a robot's. I came quickly and asked how were things, the sale, and not sure when I went to Munita at the building in the Asociación de Industrias de la República zone on the 4th floor, that earlier we all had purchased for the association, and there I greeted everyone. You know how I am, the mayor, how I am, and Jose, R.A.Y., is the same. Jose is the picture of me, that bastard. Jose, R.A.Y., is not easy. The only one who left the same as me, the mayor, is Jose, R.A.Y. It seems that he picked up more ice cream than the others. Then there we began the meeting. I don't know when, I did not realize. I swear my children by God, look what the Bible says, you should not swear by God or your head or anything, but I am before my children. I had just desire to see them together. And happier to see you now. Then I urinated from head to toe. I did not notice. Ray, say what? The mayor, I urinated on myself, Pa. That is when they took me to another world. Ray, did you feel something like hot shivers? The mayor, nothing. You do not feel anything, Poppy. What you have, R.A.Y., to avoid so that you do not get something like take a profile I gave you, you remember, and I'll give you to take it. Or give it away, it is the same, and always your arteries are going to be clean and you will never have a stroke, ever. So the secretary tells me? Doctor, that happens to you, that my son, I see that you are a bit dazed, but it was that I had pissed and I had not realized that I was urinated. Then he said, we are going to take him to his house, doctor, so you can rest for a while. But, and why do you tell me why? With my always strong character, they never told me why. Then they called my house and my wife called FIFA. FIFA came to the house to meet me. FIFA, I did not meet you. You had arrived at your house. It was approximately 8 p.m. at night when her mom called and tells me, look, your dad is here. He's bad. He's weird and he does not want to go to the doctor. He was lying down. He had already started the CNN news. You told me I want to see news with his scummy mouth. Then I arrived later. The mayor, exactly, it's true. It's true. FIFA, you don't remember that chum anymore. The mayor, eh? FIFA, you don't remember that chum anymore. The mayor, but my daughter was practically 6 months. And I had like 3 strokes. There were 3. Mom had 2 and lasted a year and a half without knowing us. And what, at 96-year-old mom died. With the mind better than all of you, go and ask your Aunt Tuta, because she was with me for a while and another time with Tuta. Ramoncito, did you inherit that from your mom? The mayor, yes, and you guys can inherit it as well. Ray, well, that's a family thing, Poppy. That's a congenital family problem. FIFA, congenital, not hereditary. Congenital is you have since you were little and you have it, but hereditary is what it can give you because you inherit it. The mayor, Jose, R.A.Y., can have it you easier than all of you, and to you and Marina you can have easier than everyone else. Because, by color, my mom's genes, you're out of that, but Jose, R.A.Y., Marina and Nana can suffer from that. Ramoncito, and Emma. The mayor, Emma too. Then I did not want to go to any clinic, but they forced me. No, Poppy, you go. In between all they grabbed me, and by force of my family I went. Let me take better saying, and there they took one look at me and put me all devices 3 strokes, frontal, luckily, because if it were here in the parietal I would be fucked. It leaves me like the people who has strokes and they get screwed in one arm, fucked in the other, or in a leg, or in the mouth, or with a crooked face. I thank God I have nothing. God healed me. I believe in God. I do not know if you are devoted to God. Then they took me. Homicidio, Poppy, but Marina, tell Poppy what you told us when we arrived, that you tell me he was asleep. Nana, when I arrived from the United States after Poppy's stroke. FIFA, no, but Poppy lasted 6 months. Nana, when we arrived from the United States, he was sitting down to eat or have breakfast. I do not know what I noticed, that he seemed scared. The mayor, what exactly one gets out of it, my daughter? I was out of it for 6 months. Nana, I was observing him, but Poppy is terribly fearful. The mayor, let me continue. Then I did not realize that neither mom realized for 1.5 years of everything that happened to my mom. You all saw her mom realized. Lourdes, my daughter speaks with your mouth. Lourdes, no, but I did not see that she was like that with that fear. The mayor, it is that all this is manifested in different ways according to the lobe that is affected. Homicidio, Poppy, you were so scared that I was helping you down the stairs and you told me not to push you, and Poppy, I'm not going to push you. The mayor, maybe at that time I thought you were a stranger. Nana, didn't recognize you. The mayor, exactly. Larry, Poppy, a question. The mayor, do not ask me so many questions, let's get to the point. As Jose, Ray, said, right now you ask me the question you want. Then I accepted being admitted. To FIFA, I thank her that she took care of her dad. I couldn't bathe. FIFA, I admitted you. I was the one that admitted you. The mayor, not you, because the doctors are the ones that admit. FIFA, okay, but the doctor told me your dad does not want. I told him no, it's not what he wants, it's what he has. If my dad has to stay, he stays. I convinced you because you told me, I'm not going to sleep with my children, and I told you, no, you have to sleep here tonight so you can sleep many more nights with your children, and obligated you did not want. I stayed with you, and I told you it is not because tomorrow I am going to run some test on you. The mayor, sorry, let me finish. Then I stayed. I did my tests. They did the electrocardiogram, the whole head and the heart. I had a micro heart attack in my heart. Nana, also? The mayor, yes, little miss, a micro. Lourdes, why didn't they tell us everything? The mayor, well, I'm telling you now how it is. Lourdes, I would have lost my residency because I would have come. The mayor, no, look, God did not want for you to lose your residency. Then I was still in a little bit of daze because my mind was already cloudy. So then the following day that they do all of the exams and everything becomes clear, they definitely admit me. But after 2 days I had a clarity lapse and I whispered, Lord, give me a few years more to raise my 3 young children, and tell them that it is not a fairy tale or made up, that I felt that same afternoon before 8 o'clock at night, 2 hands larger than this space each. They caught me and took me out of a coffin and put me in my bed. I said the next day, do everything and anything you want. I am not afraid of anything. Ray, you did not see Grammy in your dreams, as you always talk to Grandma. The mayor, look, your grandmother did 20 times many more things than me. What happened to me, thank God it was in the very frontal. The more frontal, lesser the problem. Even crazy people are operating from here. What is the name of that operation? FIFA, a lobotomy. The mayor, lobotomy to crazy, furious patients, they are slowed down, thus cutting them here, and it does not give them a stroke. FIFA, Poppy, if I tell you that, at the time of your stroke, the second day was 8 o'clock at night, it was nighttime, you and I were together and you wanted to pee, and I said, Poppy, do it here, and you didn't want to, and you got up, and when you got up you were about to fall but you didn't hit the floor, and I grabbed you with my 2 hands and I carried you and I laid you in bed. The mayor, that I remember, it was about 6 months that I recovered my memory, and those 6 months I was not able to, I couldn't walk by myself, I had to be carried. Marinita, you were all twisted and all Poppy, with the mouth twisted. The mayor, no, none of that. FIFA, you suffered muscle strength loss on one side of your body, got to have your voice was totally scratchy, sluggishy, and your mouth twisted. The mayor, but my daughter, my mouth twisted never. FIFA, still. The mayor, this left one it is. Ray, it's the right one. The mayor, something has to stay with me. Homicidio, Poppy, look, this meeting it not to judge you or to point things out. The mayor, I know my son, you guys want the complete information, like Jose, Ray, said. So after 6 months I was able to walk. I was completely lucid, totally, to the extreme that I started going to my office, and started seeing perfectly my patients. Well, after that, to that your guys had asked me who it was, that I heard. I remember that it was on a Wednesday. The voice repeated again, a voice that told me, Jose Ramon, go to where you were brought up and find the poorest church and bring them Bibles and instruments, because I like to be praised with music. I left there straight to Musicon. I bought all of that. I went to the Bible Society, purchased a lot of Bibles, and we did a party for Jesus Christ. I went from street corner to street corner. The following Wednesday they told me, how do you know which is the poorest church? I told them the Moto Conchita. Know everything here and where everything is. So the following Wednesday at the same time, Jose Ramon went to get me and now go to San Pedro de Macorís where you were born and find the poorest Christian church and bring them instruments and Bibles. Ray, was this a voice or did someone appear in your dreams? The mayor, no, sleeping, a voice while sleeping. So I did the same thing. I purchased all my Bibles and instruments and took off to San Pedro de Macorís. When I went they didn't like it because they had everything. I said that God wanted poor people that didn't have anything, and we found one in Punta Gaza that is in the middle of nowhere in San Pedro de Macorís, and it was once again a huge party that everyone that passed by would stop from corner to corner. And this, my children, you can write about whether I am alive or dead. So from then on I promised the Lord, because you were pleased with my offering, and now I promise that I will do the same to 7 poor churches each year while I am alive. Raymond, that was next to the mayor, said, and when Papi and Mommy passed away I will continue doing it. Raymond, the mayor's youngest son, that's to God we brought to 48 churches, thousands of pesos, but who gave it to me? I was born naked and I will go back naked when God calls me, and I am very happy, my children, because I am doing this charity, and I had bought a building here on the John F. Kennedy Street, the 3rd and 4th floor. On the 2nd floor this gentleman, referring to Larry, has an apartment in his office so he can live and work. Tell them what size it is, son. Larry, it is 210 meters. The mayor, 210 meters, twice as much as my house. The mayor, then the church is almost finished. I am doing the papers to praise God because I am evangelical. Ray, excuse me, Papi, clarify to me about the church. Is it almost finished? The mayor, almost finished. Larry can take you because he knows it. Ray, I thought they had finished the church and what you had inaugurated. The mayor, what happened is that we do warm-up services until it's over, but there's very little to do because we have to break all those walls that are diving it, because I had thought to do before I felt this in my heart. I was thinking of making many rooms to rent, the offices to dentists to lawyers to all those professionals. In a dream God said no, this is for me. God placed it in my heart and I did it. A large church to fit 2,000 people, the furniture will be shining but mahogany, 60 large benches. So from then on I will tell you, my children, the AIDS story. I saw that you put it there. The mayor, addressing Jose Ray, however you can, you live in the United States, ask for the FDA's opinion on the cure for AIDS, that it is there. What is it called? Homicidios. I look for him, Papi, but what he says is a lot of negative things, says that in your case the police had to intervene because you are accused of people who have been killed by your procedures, and they say that there are photos of you and thousands of other things. The mayor, that I said on television and programs that were 52 people who were cured. I can take them along with Christian pastors for you to see them with the documents. They said that because the United States has an empire, you know how many billions of dollars are earned by the United States by giving iron pills, and is not a priority of the government. They have no priority for that, and what they give is iron proteins and annoyances, and they all die, not one has been cured. Ramoncito, Dad, if you know that they have an empire and it's not an empire, it is an enormous national power, how do you think that you alone can compete with that? The mayor, no, Papa, it's that I am not the one to compete, it was God who ordered this discovering. Look, my son, look, I am going to give the cure to AIDS that I haven't given to anyone. When I get up and I look at my wife and I put my hands on her and I tell her I already know how to cure AIDS. God gave it to me in a dream and I didn't have to research. I have never had to research anything. I simply took it. It's because you aren't here, but you that have been here a few times have heard it on TV. Me tell people. Ramoncito, I saw the show on Saturday, Daddy, where you were made fun of on the program. The mayor, no, la luz que se va yo lo dije todos los días se va la luz, entonces lo prohibieron inmediatamente a salud pública llevaron guardias allá. No, the power that goes off, I said it every day, the light goes out, then they immediately banned it to public health, they took guards there. Ray, no, what did they tell you when you were dreaming of how to cure them? HIV, virus that causes AIDS. The mayor, they told me what and how, a bush called raw material, here we say maguey purple. Ray, what is it called? Sorry. And is there purple maguey and there are other types of maguey? The mayor, Tradescantia spathaceae is the scientific name. Then, I prepared it. I went to the synthesis laboratory and they made the hidden vials. With what? Along with the evangelical pastors like me, we looked for people with AIDS that was in the neighborhood, quietly, and I had an apartment away from the laboratory, hidden, and he told me, buy 2 pigs and a donkey, ass. Then he told me inject 5 cc of the pure virus. With 5 cc you can kill 1,000 people, he said, because with a syringe that carries AIDS you prick yourself and you get screwed. FIFA, but you pricked yourself and you didn't tell him, Poppy. The mayor, yes, but since I had 11 vials, there was no problem. Ray, was the syringe that you pricked yourself was from an infected one? The mayor, all infected being treated by the government. Ray, okay, if I understand correctly, did you contaminate yourself with a syringe? The mayor, no, they were not to inject the 2 pigs and the donkey with the virus. Ray, did you accidentally inject yourself with the syringe? The mayor, yes, but I already had 11 vials on, there was no danger. FIFA, he finished giving a person the injection. When he took it out he pricked himself, with that needle right there, because he was the same one who put the injections on people. The mayor, then everyone was cured. People began saying that there was many dead people, so I said on television that for each death certificate that they bring to me, which I have documentation with the government as well as with Amadita Analyzes, the only Dominican laboratory that is registered in the United States. What they say here, it's accepted over there, that I was going to give 2 million to each of the dead person, but no one ever appeared. No one, my son. Therefore the Americans had to say that they died because that is convenient for them, but I have the records in my hands. In the FDA, it is registered in the United States and Argentina, in Mexico, in Europe, Spain, France, England, India, China. I have the records. I can show it to you so you can see, but there is a drawback. What is the inconvenience? There are some public health business, in order that is called a protocol. A protocol means, my son, that they have to analyze the material from which the individual was done. In other words, the chemical substances that they have to look at which molecule they have, and here we don't do that shit. I spoke with the United States and they told me that they don't do that for anyone, and if they did that it would become their property. Big son of a bitch. Ramencito, I looked for you for a company and I looked for you $100 million to do it, remember? The mayor, that did not work, they did not accept it, Papa. Ramencito, they told you something else. The mayor, and why didn't you send them to me? Ramencito, that has already passed, Dad. The mayor, but if you say that they accepted and you did not tell me yourself, the inscription that no one will give that name to anyone, because the name is called Guzminstra Discantia Spathacia with the letters that the name begins, and we are waiting for the protocol to end is being done in a large country, but that is not the United States. It's a powerful country, but it's not the United States, and in more or less 4 months of 5 we will have the protocol, and from that point they will give me the patent. It's already being contracted in Mexico, so then we are going to go to the United States and sell the patent. We are going to announce to all of the countries that are registered, because you know how many million thousands of lives are saved and how many thousand million are worth curing. Ramencito, who are we, Poppy? You say we going to the United States to sell the patent. The mayor, the one that has the propriety to do that is me. I am the owner. With us I refer to the Dominicans. If it was not for me, I am going to leave the Dominican Republic. That is written that God is not wrong. When God says one thing, that's it. That's how long it takes, but no dead person appeared and they want me to say it again on Saturday in the program. Are you going to be here Saturday? I'd like you to be here to hear the program. I'm going to repeat it, which have come. When one speaks of 2 million pesos, anybody goes and no one has come, then nobody has died. They are all so full. Ray, and have all the AIDS patients been tested after that? The mayor, but obviously, dear, there are other exams that were done at Amadita and also the national laboratory that belongs to the government and the results were negative, therefore God isn't going to play the end of the recorded video transcript with his name. He told me another thing, and it's the only that I have 5 and the only I will give because I am airing it. He means to say that it is not pleasing the idolatry that is to worship wooden saints, that they draw, what do I know, in a wooden thing that they paint and they make it very pretty. They place collars on it and crowns and everyone goes to idolize these things, going behind it in a procession, and God does not accept that. The Bible tells us that he does not accept that. One must adore him and his son Jesus Christ and no one else. FIFA knows because she has heard it, the idolatry and all things against the nature that he created. Be certain, my son, that he is not to blame, because I have heard the story just now and I said, my son, you cannot let go of this, and he told me, Poppy, I feel good in my own skin. Leave homosexuality, and he basically was born this way. This work is a brief history of the mayor's life, in which are also exposed those negative experiences that emerge as a result of the reproduction of children outside of marriage. The mayor's marriage with his ex-wife Mrs. Clara can't be defined as a traditional one, since within his relationship as a couple, there was no intimate relationship. This, perhaps, is the main reason why the mayor was a weak target, especially for those licentious women who in one way or another all they were looking for was to get pregnant, with the exclusive purpose of obtaining and flaunt better economic conditions. Personally, I have been a victim, so to speak, of a pregnancy by deception. However, unlike the mayor, the mother of the child that we conceived, of which I am a biological father, is a lady in all the extension of the word, beautiful, cultured, professional, although with limited economic resources. Marking a remarkable difference with FIFA and Larry's mother, the mayor's two biological children, whom were born within a very poor socio-cultural circle. In order to avoid this type of traumatic inconveniences, of real but at the same time sad stories, as a recommendation for all men, I would like to point out the following. Perform a vasectomy on yourself, which can be reversible. The reversal of vasectomy is usually an outpatient procedure, since it only involves reconnecting the different ducts that were obstructed. The author has performed this type of outpatient procedure twice. The side effects from this procedure from own experience are only 2 weeks of mild discomfort, which does not compare to all the years of peace of mind, that is priceless. According to my experience criterion, the real victims of forced pregnancies motivated by those unseemly women, mothers, are precisely the begotten creatures, who grow up surrounded by situations of disaffection and are influenced by the slanderous and insulting stories created by their mothers and against their fathers. What to do when this happens to a person? According to my experience, it is recommended that the biological father establishes a consistent relationship with his son or daughter, supporting them within their true possibilities, but never try to introduce them to the heart of their home. In my case specifically, myself and my children have shared moments occasionally with those creatures that were conceived outside of marriage, such as the day of their birthday or of their saint, vacations alone, or attending the achievement of their objectives. In any case, there will always be bad fathers, because it does not matter what help or assistance they provide in favor of their children, since the malicious mother destroys the father's image. However, as in everything there are always exceptions, nonetheless I have no knowledge of any. Throughout my life I have often heard two very usual words in popular language, luck and destiny. According to my understandings, the word destiny is misused, however it should not exist above all to signal the realization of a fact or event that a person has lived or endured. Personally, destiny is something that we create ourselves, when we go out to work very early in the morning when the sun rises, to take the daily bread to our families, collaborating with their well-being. Fate is not an element that is associated with the word luck. A person, like others, create their own destiny and therefore their fate. With their work, sacrifice and capacity, we all have different routes to solidify a favorable destiny. Alluding to the present work and to the word destiny, it is necessary to note that the mayor did not create a negative destiny by taking to his holy home those children conceived outside of marriage. The mayor, for his part, acted in good faith by extending his hands to those children, who by then were men and women like Larry and FIFA, to then receive multiple abuse from them and from the other children that the mayor waited with love and eagerness to declare them his children. In my case, the mayor and my mother, Mrs. Rosa Elena Almonte, maintained a formal relationship even though they did not marry, so much so that my mother was taken to live in the house that belonged to the mayor's mother, Mrs. Marina Acosta, widow of Baez. In that place with the father's love the mayor awaited my birth and that of my sister. That is not the case of FIFA and Larry, who are the reason for the realization of this work.